Is this recording? Good, good. They told me no one would hear this for 50 years. Maybe that's better. Maybe by then they'll understand what we did, what we had to do. My name doesn't matter, not anymore. What matters is the machine, the Thunderbolt. They called it the Jug, said it looked like a milk jug with wings. We laughed at that. We laughed because if we didn't laugh, we'd have to admit what we'd created was a monster. A beautiful, necessary monster. It's 1946 now. The war's been over for months, but I still wake up smelling aluminum dust and hydraulic fluid. Still hear Cardvelli's voice echoing through the factory floor at 3 a.m, screaming in that thick Georgian accent, "It must work. It must." Let me tell you about Alexander Cardvelli. Let me tell you about the spring of 1940, when everything changed. Spring 1940. Europe was burning. The Luftwaffe's Bf-109s were cutting through British Spitfires like they were made of paper. Our boys, we had the P-40, the P-39, good planes, brave pilots, but they were bringing knives to a gunfight. I was 26 years old, fresh from MIT, working at Republic Aviation in Farmingdale, Long Island. We just lost a contract. The XP-44 project. Dead. The Army said it was insufficient. That's a polite way of saying worthless. Cardvelli was in his mid-40s then. Chain-smoked Turkish cigarettes, wore the same brown suit every day, had fingers stained with pencil lead and tobacco. He'd fled Soviet Georgia, studied in Paris, survived on circus work and airplane dreams. By 1940 he'd already designed the P-35, the P-43 Lancer. But this was different. June 12th, 1940. A Wednesday. I remember because that week France was falling. Cardvelli called us into the drafting room. There were maybe 8 of us. He stood at the chalkboard, and for a full minute he didn't say anything, just stood there, cigarette burning down to his knuckles. Then he spoke. "Gentlemen, the Army wants a lightweight fighter. They want elegance. They want a ballerina with machine guns. Do you know what I say to this? I say we give them a dinosaur, a flying dinosaur, a 7-ton sledgehammer that will smash every Messerschmitt in the sky." We thought he'd lost his mind. You have to understand, every fighter in the world was going lighter, sleeker. The Spitfire weighed 5,000 pounds. The Bf-109 maybe 5,500. And here was Cardvelli proposing a fighter that would weigh nearly 15,000 pounds fully loaded. It was insane. But then he showed us the numbers. We will build around the Pratt & Whitney R2800 Double Wasp, 18 cylinders, 2,000 horsepower. But that is not enough. We will add a turbo supercharger, General Electric's turbo supercharger. At 25,000 feet, when other engines choke, ours will breathe. The R2800. God, what a beast. It was an air-cooled radial, meaning no fragile coolant systems, no radiators to puncture. You could shoot holes in a radial engine, and it would keep running. We'd seen it happen. But the turbo supercharger, that was the secret weapon. See, most engines lose power at altitude. The air gets thin, combustion suffers. But with a turbocharger, you force more air into the engine. You maintain sea-level power at 25,000 feet, higher even. The British had the Merlin engine with a mechanical supercharger. Excellent engine, but it had limits. Our turbocharger system was, well, it was American excess. Complicated, temperamental, brilliant. There was just one problem, and it was a big one. The turbo supercharger had to sit in the tail of the aircraft, behind the cockpit, behind everything. But the engine was in the nose. That meant we needed ducting. Hundreds of feet of smooth, curved ducting to channel exhaust gases back to the turbocharger, then return the compressed air forward to the engine. Do you know what happens when airflow gets disrupted in a turbo supercharger system? The engine coughs, sputters, dies. At 25,000 feet, that means you're a falling coffin. Cardvelli's solution was, well, it was either genius or madness. Probably both. We designed the ducts first. The ducts are the skeleton, the heart. Everything else, the fuselage, the wings, the cockpit, we build around the ducts. We'd never done that before. Never. You design the airframe first, then figure out where to stuff the systems. But Cardvelli flipped it. He said the turbocharger system was the airplane. Everything else was just packaging. It took us 3 weeks of 18-hour days to get the ducting right. We used wind tunnel models, smoke test, pressure calculations. I remember one night, must have been 2 a.m., I found Cardvelli asleep at his desk, his face pressed against a blueprint, drool smudging the ink. I thought about waking him. Didn't. Let him sleep. By mid-June, we had the basic design. Cardvelli presented it to the Army Air Corps on June 12th. They looked at the numbers, the weight, the size, the cost. They ordered the XP-47B prototype on September 6th, 1940. A week later, on the 13th, they signed a contract for 773 production aircraft, before we'd even built the damn thing. The contract was worth $56,499,924. $56 million in 1940 money. We called it the XP-47B. Hart Miller, guy in military contracts, he's the one who came up with Thunderbolt, said it had gravitas. Cardvelli didn't care what we called it, he just wanted it to fly. May 6th, 1941. Lowry Brabham, our test pilot, took the XP-47B up for its first flight. I was on the tarmac watching. We all were. Even Cardvelli, who usually stayed in the drafting room, came out. That airplane, when it lifted off, I swear the ground shook. The R-2800 roared like nothing I'd ever heard. Brabham took it up to 15,000 feet in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. The P-40 took twice that long. When he landed, Brabham climbed out, pulled off his helmet, and said 5 words. "This thing wants to fight." We'd done it. We built a fighter that could match, no, exceed the Bf-109 at altitude. But the war wasn't waiting for us to celebrate. By 1942, we were in full production. 2 factories, Farmingdale and Evansville, Indiana. At our peak, we were rolling out 28 Thunderbolts a day. 28. Every 8 hours, another fighter. But here's what they don't tell you in the newsreels. Building a P-47 was like assembling a cathedral out of chaos. That airplane had tens of thousands of individual parts. The R-2800 engine, Pratt & Whitney made some, but Ford, Chevrolet, Buick, Nash, they all made them too. The aluminum came from Alcoa in Pennsylvania, magnesium from American Magnesium Corporation, tires from B.F. Goodrich in Akron, machine guns from Colt in New Haven. You know who made some of our flexible drive shafts? S.S. White Dental Manufacturing Company. Yes, dental. The same company that made dental drills. In war, you use what you can get. Every cowling fastener, those quarter-turn DZU's fasteners, came from a company in Babylon, New York. Every bolt, every rivet, every screw came from somewhere. We were a symphony of American industry. Or a circus. Sometimes both. The pilots, though, God, the pilots. April 1943. The 56 Fighter Group, Zemke's Wolfpack, took the first P-47s into combat over Europe. They were skeptical. The Thunderbolt was huge. It didn't climb fast. It couldn't turn like a Spitfire. But Hubert Zemke, Colonel Hubert Zemke, he figured it out. He'd been a combat observer with the RAF in 1940. He knew the Luftwaffe's tricks. Gentlemen, this airplane doesn't dogfight, it pounces. You dive on them from altitude, 30,000 feet, 32,000, and you hit them with the speed of God's own judgment. Then you pull up, climb back to altitude, and do it again. They can't follow you. They can't catch you. And that's what they did. The P-47 could dive faster than anything in the sky, over 550 miles per hour in a near vertical drop. German pilots would try to escape by diving. Bad mistake. The Thunderbolt would follow them down, 8 50 caliber machine guns screaming, and tear them apart. We put 3,400 rounds of ammunition in those wings. When all 8 guns fired together, the airplane shuddered. Pilots said it felt like the hand of God slapping the enemy. But it wasn't all victories. The early P-47s had a range problem. They could only escort bombers about halfway to Germany. After that, the bombers were on their own. We lost thousands of men because of that. Kartveli hated it. Hated it. He called the external fuel tanks ornaments, said they ruined the aerodynamics. But he designed them anyway. Paper tanks, aluminum tanks, the big 200-gallon belly tank they called the Tumor. By late 1943, with drop tanks hanging under their bellies, the P-47s could escort the bombers deep into Germany, and by the following year their range pushed toward Berlin. The long-range fighter cover meant the bombers finally stopped dying. In droves. You want to know what we achieved? By VE Day, Victory in Europe, Thunderbolt pilots claimed 86,000 railroad cars destroyed, 9,000 locomotives, 6,000 armored vehicles, 68,000 trucks. But here's a number that keeps me awake. 5,222 P-47s lost. 1,723 of those in accidents, training, mechanical failures, things we couldn't foresee. Every lost plane meant a lost pilot. A kid from Iowa or Texas or New York who climbed into a machine I helped build and never came home. There's something they didn't put in the official histories, something Kartveli made us swear never to discuss. August 8th, 1942, the prototype, the original XP-47B, crashed during a test flight. Tail wheel was left down. Pilot error, they said. The airplane was destroyed. But here's the thing. We'd already received an order for 773 production aircraft 2 years earlier. September 13th, 1940, before the prototype even flew. The Army was betting everything on Kartveli's numbers, on calculations and wind tunnel tests, and faith. If the design had failed, if the prototype had proven the concept wrong, we would have built 773 useless airplanes, $56 million down the drain. The war might have ended differently. But Kartveli knew, he knew it would work. I asked him once in 1944 how he could be so certain. Because I designed it to save lives, not just American lives, all lives. The faster we end this war, the fewer people die. The P-47 is not elegant, it is not beautiful, but it is necessary, and necessity does not fail. He was right. The P-47 had one of the lowest loss rates of any American fighter, about 0.7% per mission, less than 1%. The pilots called it the Jug because it could absorb punishment, flak, cannon fire, even mid-air collisions. We heard stories of P-47s coming home with entire cylinder heads blown off, wings full of holes, tail sections hanging by cables. One pilot, I wish I remembered his name, landed with 200 bullet holes. 200! He climbed out, patted the fuselage, and said, "She brought me home." That's what Kartveli designed into the airplane from the start. The ducting, the turbo supercharger ducting that filled the belly, it acted as a crumple zone, a cushion between the pilot and the ground. After a few crashes, we analyzed the wreckage and realized the ducts saved more lives in crashes than in combat. It was an accident, a beautiful accident. We built 15,683 P-47 Thunderbolts. Republic made 15,200. Curtiss Wright added 354 more. By 1945, we were the most produced U.S. AAF fighter of the war. But there were costs, hidden costs. The workers, God, the workers. We had women, teenagers, men too old for the draft. They worked 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. I saw people lose fingers in punch presses, get burned by welding torches, crushed by falling engine blocks. There was a woman, Margaret, I think her name was. She riveted wing panels. One day her hand slipped. The rivet gun punched through her palm. She didn't scream, just pulled her hand free, wrapped it in a rag, and went back to work. Said she had a quota to meet. We all had quotas. Kartveli drove himself harder than anyone. By 1945, he looked 20 years older. His hands shook. He'd lost weight, must have been 30 pounds. Chain smoked 3 packs a day, drank black coffee like water. I found him in his office one night staring at a telegram. His face was gray. The telegram was from a mother in Kansas. Her son, a P-47 pilot, had been shot down over Germany, killed. She wanted to know who built the airplane, wanted to know if we'd done everything right. Kartveli never answered that telegram, but he kept it in his desk drawer with all the others. 50, 60 telegrams. Parents, wives, brothers. Some thanking us, most asking why. I don't know if he ever forgave himself for the ones we couldn't save. The war ended. VE Day, May 8, 1945. VJ Day, August 15th. We kept building P-47s until December, then the contract stopped. No more war, no more need for fighters. The Evansville factory closed in early 1946. Farmingdale downsized. Half the workforce, gone, just like that. Kartveli stayed on, designed the F-84 Thunderjet, the F-105 Thunder Chief, even consulted on early space shuttle concepts for NASA. But he never talked about the P-47, not really. It was like a ghost he couldn't shake. I left Republic in 1947, took a job at Boeing, moved to Seattle, started a family, tried to forget. But you don't forget something like that. You don't forget the smell of aluminum dust and hydraulic fluid, the sound of .850 caliber machine guns being test-fired at dawn. The weight of knowing that every rivet, every weld, every bolt you tightened might be the one that saves a life, or fails to. They say the P-47 Thunderbolt won the war. Maybe it did. Maybe it was just one piece of a 1,000-piece puzzle. I don't know anymore. What I know is this. For 4 years I helped build a machine designed to kill. And in killing, it saved lives. It ended a war that would have dragged on, claimed more millions, more cities, more futures. Kartveli used to say, necessity does not fail. But necessity also doesn't comfort the widows, doesn't bring back the boys who burned in cockpits, or bled out over France, or disappeared into the cold Atlantic. The P-47 was a marvel of engineering, a triumph of American industry. But it was also a gravestone, a monument to what we're capable of when we're desperate. This tape will sit in a government archive for 50 years, maybe longer. When you hear this, whoever you are, remember, we didn't build the Thunderbolt because we wanted to. We built it because we had to. And that, more than anything, is what terrifies me.